And thank you very much for joining us here on PM Express. And on a Wednesday, we do the Manifesto tracker. And again, Dennis Sari from Imani, is the consultant there with Imani, is joining me for this special edition because Imani today launched their final scorecard, the MPP's 2016 Manifesto, with some very interesting, fascinating findings there, rating the government ultimately 56.77%. How did they get to that conclusion? We're going to go through that for you. And then afterwards, we'll be speaking to the Deputy Information Minister will join us with his thoughts and reactions to all that. But in there is also a conversation about records, because Imani in 2016 did a similar final scorecard for the NDC government. And the beauty of this year's election is that both gentlemen on the ticket of the MPP and NDC have all, one is a former president and the other is an incumbent. And so there's records to compare there. We'll look at that when we sit down to have a conversation with our guests. Dr. William Ahaji, who is the former head of Reset, director of Reset for the NDC, will join us via Zoom as we begin to have a conversation. So stay with me as we go through this for you. And Dennis, thank you very much. I want to
thank you very much.
There's so much to get through, so we're going to run through it a bit. I want to go straight to the methodology because that's where it explains, just breaks it down for you. This is interesting.
Yeah, it was designed by the black narrator of the Daily Graphic to illustrate our Manifesto project in 2016. Yeah.
Okay, and that's just Franklin Kujo there, our partner in crime, they say. So this is how it's been put together. So we're going to look for you. We're going to analyze for you the economy, how they perform the economy, human capital, infrastructure, governance, social sector, and then we'll give it overall performance. And so let's go to. I mean, I want to quickly go to the methodology because that is where we get to learn a bit about the process into that. I mean, that's the background. Yeah. We know why
all of these backgrounds.
Let's do that. So sum up for us very quickly how you put together the manifesto.
Okay, so the manifesto methodology is a 4-stage approach. However, it's multi-phased. Now, under the methodology, we do a critical content analysis, and what we do is that we set the yardstick in terms of identifying each promise in the manifesto. After identification, then we categorize all the manifesto promises we have identified under 5 themes, and that is what we saw under economy, infrastructure, human capital investment, social services, and also governance as well. So when we categorize them, then we come and do scoring. And after the scoring and coding, then we put it in the computerized framework as a manifesto assessment framework. Then it generates the final scorecard. Okay,
so that's how you get the final scorecard. As far as this is concerned. And so you have the multiple data sources which you look at, and this is important. And so this is not just government sources. They look at national budgets, annual progress reports, parliamentary Hansas portals and websites of ministries, departments, agencies, news articles is important also. All these
international reports, we also rely greatly on that.
And then you're very particular about reliability and validity of what you're doing.
So what we do is that's multi-phase. So there's a team of consultants that will verify every single information to justify the scores that are given to each promise.
Okay, and so these are the key areas, as we indicated earlier. We're going to look at economy. So
these are the thematic
So when you take
areas,
economy, you can come
so what happens is that globally, these are the 11 areas shaping economic development, social well-being, and prosperity. Now we can sum all of these 11 areas under these 5 themes. So that is why these 5 themes become the basis of the manifesto assessment framework.
Let's get into it, because that's where you get to learn a bit more about it. I mean, let's go straight to the first key issue there when it comes to. So this is very complex sort of formula, right?
Okay. That's the manifesto assessment model. That's what we key in all the scoring, and it generates the scorecard
into it. I mean, so I want to quickly go to the first key area. So explain this. This is very important.
So this is the grade. Now, when the computerized system generates the score, then we have to grade your performance. So below 20% is a failure, between 20 and 40 is a poor progress, and between 40 and 60 is either a weak or fair satisfactory progress. So between 40 and 50. So last year, after the midterm assessment, the score of the NPP was 48.78%. So they made a weak satisfactory progress. Now this year, when we declare the score, we find where their performance is, and we also find out
that is an important point you just made there.
Yeah.
When you first launched this is
when you did the
midterm one,
yeah,
they were at
48.78%,
which became a very controversial subject.
Yes. Yeah.
But from the last one now done,
and
they
now
have progressed.
So
they've done more
satisfactory progress
in fulfilling their promises.
An 8% increase in their performance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So that's how you're going to rate them.
The bands.
Okay. So those are the bands that we're going to be using for the analysis. So output-based performance, let's go into it quickly in terms of let's do economy. You give them 57.62%. Why?
Yeah, so if you look at the economy...
That's actually what
this is a fair, satisfactory progress.
Okay.
Now, if you look at the economy theme, it comprises of the broader economy, trade and industry, business development, then there's agriculture and tourism. So a key influence on the economy was agric and tourism. So in agric, they performed very significantly well. Then they also did well in the area of tourism, boosting tourism and kind of advertising our historical
sites. So that's trade and industry.
So this trade and industry. So one of the things that they did is that they abolished the special import levy on goods imported. Again, the VAT on medicines that were imported that were not domestically produced. And this VAT was charged by the former government, but this current government also abolished it. They also promised to abolish the VAT on financial services. They did that. Now, under this area, in terms of their economic policy, they focus on what fiscal discipline. Now, under fiscal discipline, they promised that they're going to pass the fiscal responsibility law, set up the council, and also be fiscally disciplined. So if you combine the economic policy and economic stability policies, they were able to achieve this. So when we throw up the graph, you see that in this area they are performing.
Yeah, I mean, there's no argument here. Whether you pass it, you say you pass it. If you pass it, you get a tick.
Yeah, you get a score.
If you didn't pass it, you don't get a score. Very simple.
Nonetheless, in terms of India, a key promise they made under economic policy was that they wanted to change our GDP fortunes, and by the end of their fourth term, we have a double-digit GDP. But if you look at even the projections before the pandemic, there was no way we were going to get to a double-digit GDP, so they couldn't do this. And in terms of even...
So that point is important. Yeah. So in the 2016 manifesto, NPP promised that they, in the 4 years, they will hit double-digit
GDP. Yes.
GDP.
Yeah.
You saying discount COVID-19. Before it, they were still not hitting
that. Even the 2020 budget, the projection was that the economy was going to grow about 6.2%.
Okay.
Now, we entered at 2020. So even before the pandemic, the projections, there was no way we were going to hit the double-digit GDP, and also minimizing political patronage of state microfinance institutions. Look at how Maslow allocated funds and all of that. It's very hard to determine that because they don't have a clear competitive strategy or tendering approach through which they select people or beneficiaries for such funds. So they were unable to do that. They also facilitate the passage of the consumer protection law. The Ghana Standard Code has been developed, but in terms of the law, it has not been passed. Then also, they have not been able to reduce corporate tax rate from 25% to 20%.
They haven't done, obviously. So this is the overall for trade industry, and you see the microeconomic. I think that's where they score the highest.
The highest
for macroeconomic stability at 77%.
That's a very good progress because the focus there was on fiscal discipline. And in terms of fiscal discipline, the key things they promised was to pass the fiscal responsibility law, set up the council, work to reduce interest rate, and all of that. They were able to do that within the 4 years.
Another thing I found interesting was economic management from taxation to production. It almost became like a slogan for mainly the vice president who was, in fact, it was in a manifesto eventually that they want to move Ghana from taxation to production because they had held the view that the previous government had imposed what they called nuisance taxes and they wanted to remove all of them. And you say they've done 62% of that. That's
so you see that the things that they promised was that they were going to abolish the special import levy, the VAT on imported medicines, the 17.5 VAT on domestic airline services, the 17.5 VAT on financial services. They abolished all of that, and also the 5% VAT on tax on real estate services too. They were able to abolish it. So more like now they are incentivizing businesses or private industry to now kind of develop more, get more space and invest. So now they move it from taxing and to encouraging them to produce. Now, after production, then they take taxes from there. So
I also want to quickly highlight this before we move on to the next one. Job creation.
Job creation.
2016 manifesto was the one that is agenda.
Agenda for jobs, creating prosperity and an equal society.
So job creation was central to them. You say they've done 49%.
Yes, and that's a weak satisfactory progress. And the reason is that the jobs that have been created in this area mainly came out from the government initiatives, NAPCO, 1D, 1F, rearing for food and jobs, planting for food and jobs. So it created, and also looking at the tax rebate or tax reductions they gave to industry, it opened up a little space, but the private sector could not even employ that much more. So government created a more temporary sort of employment for people in the country. So in terms of their job creation policies, they were able to prosecute them through different areas. But in terms of business competitiveness or reducing the cost of business, they couldn't do that, because now you see when they broke the VATs from NHIL and also the GET fund, now it became a tax, and that was the reason why Ghana's even position on the Doing Business report, we have been declining from 108th in 2017 to now 114 in 2020.
So that's an important point for me because of the job creation. But then let's look at tourism, culture, and creative. I don't want to sum too much in here because it's self-explanatory. You give them, these are the promises they said they will do.
And significantly, the most important thing they sought to do was a deliberate marketing strategy, and that is why they capitalized on the year of return. And they did significantly well. And in creative arts, they set up the fund, and now a committee has been set up in the High Court to deal with creative art issues and all of that.
I mean, so this is an area that for our friends in the entertainment industry, they like.
In fact,
so
it even influenced their performance and the economy, because this in tourism, in terms of revamping the Ghana Tourist Authority and also the creative art activities they did there, and some cultural events that they held.
I mean, all of them very significant.
All of that very significant.
I mean, because culture was 75%.
Yes.
Tourism is 72%.
All of that.
Creative arts is 61%. So this is a great performance there. I mean, I guess one of the highest they've done. I mean, well, we've seen education too later. 73.81% for tourism, culture, and creative arts.
And this is a very area that they did very well.
Yeah, let's look at agriculture, because one of the flagship programs is planting for food and jobs, right? Well, what
happened here is that one of their major promises was to ensure that farming inputs are readily available to the farmers, and they did that. And there was a program that they set up, the farming input monitoring team. What they sought to do is that now they decentralized the way of sending the inputs to the farmers. So now these inputs were allocated at the district level, so it became very accessible, although there were some communities who struggled to get it. But in terms of improving the accessibility, they were able to do that. And also, they reactivated and expanded the mass spraying and high-tech programs that even now the fertilizers given to them is the Cocoa Research Institute of Ghana now does the validity and check its quality and all of that. And they reintroduced the compensation of payments. They have this something called the Cocoa Disease Control Program. And when your farms are going to be cut down, previous government used to pay a compensation of 55296, and now it has been increased to about 1,000 Ghana cedis. And also they revived the Council of Scientific Research and Industrial Research. What they did was that year-on-year budgetary allocation to this institution had even increased, and that even helped the cocoa.
I want to quickly go to the ratings page because of the of time, because then that sort of gives you a picture. So that is agriculture, 59.54%, and irrigation. I think the best performing
was
improved seeds and fertilizer, 88%. That's quite significant. Their poorest is irrigation, and you know what comes to mind? One village, one dam.
So what happened was that the main promise, even under this theme, was that they were going to build a Poalogo Dam to control when the Bagri Dam is released.
They've done something there. Something went to Parliament.
Yes, so now everything has been approved by Parliament. So I think the sword has been cut. So the project is supposed to start by next year. But because they promised it within this term, and the one village, one dam project, because they couldn't do it across the country, they couldn't really materialize some of the promises that they said under ABC. That's why they performed badly there. And so you see the high-tech program really influenced the improved seats.
Human capital investment is key, 55.87. But let's quickly go into the breakdown. Segment. This is education. 55%. But I want to quickly show the graph, because the graphs is simplified view of this is it.
Good.
So I see that when it comes to primary education, you score them 100%. Why?
It did significantly well because they redefined the primary education now to include the basic, senior high school, technical and vocational. So now from all that level, it is free and universal to every Ghanaian. So in terms of delivering primary education, they did brilliant. And that's why they had 100% score. All the promises that they they made under primary education, they delivered them. But the area that they didn't do well was inclusive education, because now some special schools are not captured under free senior high school policy. And the state of the school for the mentally disabled and also children living with different forms of disability, those schools have not been revamped to state of the art. So the students there are also struggling. Then in terms of incorporating the management of the mission school with the missions too, they couldn't do well. That's why you see a very poor performance in that area. But in terms of delivering the teacher trainee allowances, they did significantly.
Yeah, so they are just above 60%.
And even Arabic education, they have, as a 2019,
I mean, I'm astounded by this. So this is what
they have trained about 3,000 Arabic teachers and resourced them. So if you go to the Islamic B senior high schools where they teach Arabic, now they are well resourced to undertake the Arabic education program.
Interesting. So that is education. I guess one of the
even secondary technical education
strongest point. I mean, let's do health. Health, you give them overall 56.77%. Let's go to the specifics on the graph here. So, and another one that struck me was rescue and restructure the NHIS. If I had not seen this from you, I would have thought they haven't done much here. But actually, next to primary education will be this area, because they're almost they've achieved almost 100%.
So what they did was that they sought to kind of restructure the NHIS, that the NHIS levies that we pay will be seeded directly into the NHIS fund, which gave them access to a lot of resources and to year-on-year allocations to it increase. And the NHIS too, well, they were very innovative in terms of the way they transact business with their clients. Now they brought in the mobile renewal scheme, which ensured that even by a click of a button, you could renew your NHIS at a very cheaper cost. And also they expanded access across the country to people who previously would have to travel to some district offices to even renew their cards. Now, when they get a card at even their local level, they're able to renew their cards, and they don't have to even travel. So when Imani did the Inspirational Public Sector Leadership Award, NHIS was the most innovative public institution in the country. Was it
under this government?
Yes, under this government.
Okay.
Yeah, we did it in 2019. So the NHIS was the most innovative, and addressing sector disparities so that they made a fair progress, because now they are trying to expand free and access healthcare to across the country. They brought in Zipline, so it helped the influence this, and also revamp some few hospitals. And also government is now investing in the Agenda 111. At first it was 88, and now coming in the 111 policy. But in terms of a well-coordinated cancer policy, they've started with some few investment, but they couldn't really come up with a comprehensive program to roll out the cancer policy.
Yeah, I mean, so that's why they scored up poorly. So let's look at governance. So for me, governance was the area that I was looking quite closely at, and you gave them 59.25% overall for governance. Let's go to the breakdown.
It was significantly shaped by chieftaincy.
Chieftaincy. I mean, so let's go to, this is local government, but I want to go to the graph, because the graph is a simplified view of all the key issues on governance. The foreign affairs was actually interesting for me. Comment on this for me.
One of the highest security,
security, all part of the all part of governance.
All part of governance.
Okay, so let's go to the graph. Let's go to the graph.
Once we get to the graph.
Let's go to the graph. Here we go. So foreign affairs. I didn't really think that we're big on foreign affairs, but they've done 79%.
So the key promises they made there was to ensure that Ghana actively participates in our regional market in terms of the creation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And Ghana played an active role. We have passed some of the protocol, except on the one on free movement. And currently, the Secretariat is being hosted in Ghana. Now, Ghana previously was an affiliate member of the international organization La Francophone. But we've signed a language pact that has made us now kind of, let's say, a full-fledged member. Now, working with the diaspora, working the Ministry of the diaspora office in the Office of the President, the Ministry of Tourism. Now they built the year of return, which people came, they've established their businesses and all of that. And even within the regional market, Ghana has played a very critical role, and that's even the reason why currently our president is the chair of ECOWAS. So most of the foreign affairs promises that they made, were able to deliver them. The area of security,
even before it comes to security,
they did very well.
One of the areas that we'll definitely have to focus is governance, corruption, and public accountability. It's in red for obvious reasons. And then there's local government also in red. We'll come to look at this area close it shortly. But I want to quickly go to chieftaincy, which is quite a surprise for me. 81%. What have they done there?
So what they did there was to build more strategic partnership with traditional leaders. You know, in the run-up to creation of the new district, the chiefs played a very critical role in it. And also now what they are trying to do is bring traditional leaders into the local government scheme. So some partnerships were built, and also most of the development project that government embarked on in their manifesto promises, they wanted to work hand in hand with the chiefs. And now under chieftaincy too, there's something called religious affairs and civil society. What happened was they wanted to encourage a culture of giving, and the impact of this practice was what we saw in 2020 when the pandemic struck. When we set up the COVID-19 fund, we saw private individuals came in to support government, and even private individuals built the new
Ghana. So you're saying that was a result of a direct government policy?
Yes, it was a promise that they made in their manifesto to work with the private sector to encourage a culture of giving. So we saw that although it may not be a national policy that they may outdoor, but underground or in the background, they worked on it. And the impact of that, we think that the way the private sector came in and private individuals came in to support the government, it suggests their commitment to encouraging that culture of giving and relationship with citizens and all of that.
I see.
They did very well. And that is the impact here. Most people don't know that it's a critical policy that they pursued. Yeah.
Okay, let's look at security. Security is interesting and important because in the current context, there's a sense out there by many that the country is insecure. I mean, John Mahama had criticized the government. Security had become a major campaign issue.
Definitely.
But you actually found, and this is actually very great, good performance that they've actually achieved 72% of the promise they made in security.
What people too should realize is that we strictly analyze the manifesto.
Yeah, this is what you promised.
Yes, that's what you promised.
What you delivered.
So outside the manifesto, new things happen. But when in order to ensure fairness and consistency, we look at the manifesto. But we have other products that we look at issues happening in the country. But under security, they promised that they were going to embark on the National Barracks Regeneration Program. And see, between 2017 and 2019, the government has given most housing projects that they embarked on to the security services. The Vice President launched one last year. The President this year has also opened one for the security services. They also promised that in terms of addressing cyber security and organized crime, they're going to set up a special office at the CID headquarters, which they have been able to do. And also they work hand in hand with the National Board on Small Arms and Weapons, and now they have collected more than 10,000 of illegal arms that were roaming in the system. So in terms of meeting their manifesto promise in relation to security, they made very good progress in that.
I see. Okay, let's come to the big red
the red buttons.
Here. Let's do governance, corruption, public accountability. This is so important. Within the current context of the Martin Amidu's corruption risk assessment on the JAPA and all the accusations that have come, the firing of the Public Procurement Authority boss. I mean, people say that it's in red for a reason, and that they had failed to do very much in the area when it comes to their own promises.
Yeah. So if you look at corruption and public accountability, let me start from there. One thing that they did very good in terms of public accountability was that they said they were going to implement the findings of the Public Accounts Committee. And as of 2019, about 97 million Ghana cedis have been retrieved, and it was based on the findings of the PAC. Now, in corruption, they promised that they were going to set up the Office of the Special Prosecutor, which they did, to pass the Right to Information Bill, which they also did. Nonetheless, one of the key strategies to fighting corruption that the NPP promised was that they were going to set up the website for corruption reporting. That's under the Whistleblowers Act 2006, which they didn't do. Again, they also promised that they were going to ensure that public servants or public officials are disciplined and uphold the highest form of values, which they couldn't do that. And even the behavior of the PPA boss and sacking him also attests the fact that they couldn't instill that discipline and values into the public servant. Additionally, they promised that they were going to set up an office at the Ghana Audit Service that's focused on procurement and value for money. Now, we are seeing more contracts come up where the value for money issues have been raised, and currently even the JAPA, looking at the OSPs, raised a lot of issues about value for money. So because that particular unit has not been created at the Ghana Audit Service, we believe that that is the reason why some agreements in this country now, when government severed its relationship with GCNet and brought in a new system, we see GRA consistently complain about losing revenue. And it was an agreement. If it had gone through, if that unit had been set and it had gone through, I'm sure some value for money analysis would have been undertaken. And so the behavior of even some government officials and the PPA example and all of that shows that they did, and they promised that they were going to even strictly adhere to the Public Procurement Authority's legislations. And looking at some examples that have come up, it shows that clearly they didn't stick to that point. That's why you are seeing a very poor performance.
Yeah, I mean, in that area. Local government, on top of my head, they had promised to make the DC's positions electable.
Yes.
I mean, at least they tried, but you're looking strictly at, you promised you do it. Have you done it? They haven't.
They didn't do it. And that was a key promise there. But one thing they did under local government was that they provided much more resources. So nominally, budget allocation to the local government service has increased about 80%. And also working hand in hand, the Land Valuation Board, they set up a scheme working with GIZ. They developed a framework of collecting more property taxes and all of that. So, but one thing that they couldn't do is that they said they were going to revive the local government training center in Tamale, but it is not a state-of-the-art institution. But these are critical to in terms of governance. That's why we highlighted them
in red. And when we sit down, I mean, Pius Ajide will join us. He'll get to answer a few questions about why they perform this poorly with governance, corruption, public accountability, and local government as well. Very important to many people. Social services, a lot of importance there for a lot of people. So I want to quickly go to the graph, so that the graph gives you a simplified view of the key issues that we could analyze. So I mean,
I'm sure all of that will be captured.
So the social services, you give social sector, you give them 58.85%. That's fairly
fair, satisfactory.
So I see the best performance in the Livelihood Empowerment Adjustment Program, LEAP. Why did they do 80%?
What they promised under the LEAP was that they were going to target more female-headed households. And now if you look at the distribution of beneficiaries, there are more females under the program than males, which suggests that majority of their targeting focused on women, and that most women too are female-headed households. Now, they also promised that under the LEAP, they're going to employ technology in the targeting. And now, currently, government has a relationship with ISOCO, and now all targeting activities in terms of selecting beneficiaries is done digitally. So the promise that they made under LEAP, they were able to basically about 80%.
I also see the 66% for women's empowerment, because what? You said today that you found that they've actually given more women opportunities.
They promised that in their administration, they are going to reserve about 30% of the appointment, about 305 appointments the president makes, 30% will go to women. And out of that, about 95 of them went to women, so about 30.8% went to women. Nonetheless, realize that majority of the women were padded at the local government area. So we didn't see much of them at the central government level, but they met their target here.
Okay, well, so that's why they...
But they didn't do well under sports development, because the only significant thing they did was to work on the sports airline. But the ultra-modern 10 stadia that they promised, we have not seen any of them being opened up for sports.
Let's go to the infrastructure, 51%. Let's go to the graphs. And let's see what you found there with there's energy that comes on infrastructure
development, there's sports and harbor, there's aviation.
Yes, all that comes.
Land and natural resources
comes under that. So here's it. So you have oil and gas, power, and oil and gas are 54.5%. Power is 60%. And I guess they will say that's the reason why we don't have Doomsaw.
Yes. So they worked to ensure that they sustain the generation capacity and also ensure fuel security. Now, one key thing they did under the power sector was to establish the energy sector financial restructuring and recovery program. And the task force was set. Now, the first phase of renegotiating the PPAs that has been signed in terms of converting them from take or pay to take and pay has started. Again, under here, they also pursue the least cost fuel policy, where the cheapest source of fuel is going to be used for power generation to bring down the end user tariff. And that's why they moved the car power ship from Tema to Takra.
To make it
and they also invested in renewable energy, so the Laura solar park and also some other solar generation project that the VRA embarked upon.
I mean, so those are key areas. It's a contested area. I mean, the NDC will have a lot to say on this. So structural development, this is where the roads are, right?
Yes, this is where the roads are.
I mean, so I want to look for roads here. I mean, the roads, let's just analyze that, because that is controversial. You gave them 60%.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So the promises they made on the roads was that they were going to construct more interchanges and expand the road network. And now, since 2017 to 2020, we've seen them open the Tema roundabout, the Tema motorway roundabout interchange. There's a Tamale one that's undergoing. There's a Pokwase one. The president just commissioned or cut short for the Obechebi Lamte one. And there's a new one that is coming up in Takrade as well. Now, in terms of road expansion, the critical road, let's say, transport area that they talked about was the Bogoso, Pristia, Ayamfore area. They expanded the road networks, and even in Hohoi, there are some areas, and also embarked massively on the cocoa routes activities as well. So we realized that in terms of the road promises, they were able to do, and transportation even comes under here. We realized that last year, the government gave the STC about 50 buses and the Metro Mass to do the BRT. This year, just about 2 weeks ago, he gave them about 100 buses as well to boost kind of domestic transportation within the country. And now even there are now more women being trained to drive these buses. So in terms of roads and transport, they did significantly well.
I see. Okay, I see. I mean, so 60%. Well, I mean that.
And also port and harbour, now they've
because of MPS's project. So now let's go. We are ending now on this. The overall performance, you give them 56.77%, and you say this signifies fair, satisfactory performance, which is what you laid out at the beginning. Yes, explain why 56.77%.
Okay. So now, if you put, then this is the breakdown. So if you put the broader economy, trade and industry, agric and tourism together, governance, and talk about all the subsectors under that, we now aggregate the scores and find the performance as at now. So if you look at the NPP, as at now, they have been able to fulfill 56.77% of the 510 promises that they gave to Ghanaians in 2016. Now, in the next slide, we give you a breakdown of, in terms of the performance. Yes. So the total number of promises were 510.
So this is important because you have to put it in context. Yes. The final thing we'll talk about is what NDC had, because that too you have to put it in context how many promises they made. So 510. And then
they fully implemented 151. And one thing we saw was that last year when we were doing this same program, the number of promises that they have fully implemented was just around 141. But this year it increased to 151. This area was very significant. Just about 120 promises were partially implemented, but it rose to 280 because the pandemic compelled government to undertake much more investment in social service and human capital. So you see that this performance was hugely impacted by the work they did in social services and human capital investment. But there are 79 promises that they never touched on.
They never touched on. Okay. I mean, but this is interesting. I mean, they fully completed 151 of them.
Promises,
I mean, so if you put all this together as in fully and partially implemented, you get
something around, let's say, 430.
Just a little over 400. I mean, compared to 510. Well, let's see what the party says. Of course, then this is where you put them. Overall performance, fair
progress,
satisfactory progress. Now, question. 2016. You did this for the NDC as well.
Yes.
The NDC scored 52.9%.
Yes, approximately 53%.
Exactly. That is, if you put it in context to what you found with the NPP.
So the NDC made 540 promises in their 2012 manifesto. 540 promises.
So they made 30 promises more than the NPP did.
And by the end of 2016, they had also let's say achieved about 53% of the total promises that they made. So if you want to do the comparison, that is what the debate is going to carry on forever till the election.
I mean, MPP saying, well, listen, if you have 3 percentage points advantage, and that's significant
if you look at the difference between
elections.
Their promises, 30% is even just less than it's less than even 1%, or let's say below 10% of the total promise. So if you want to do the debate, let's put the number of promises in context. So that's the performance of the two parties, and that's their track record. 540 promises, 53%. 510 promises, 56.77%.
Okay, I mean, there you have it. You could now use that. If this is important to you as a middle class person who this is key, you can now make a decision which it comes to credibility.
Yes,
it comes to track record. For the two gentlemen who are going to be contesting. Make of that what you will, but wait because we're going to be interrogating this with Pius Ajide, the Deputy Information Minister, and also the former Director of Research for the NDC, Dr. William Ahaji. Right after this, stay with me. Thank you. And thank you very much for joining us here on PM Express. It's a fascinating program that we have in store for you because of the analysis that you probably just witnessed, just launched today, hot off the press, from Imani, analyzing and giving us a final assessment of the government when it comes to the manifesto promises they made in 2016, based on what you voted for them. And so we're going to be going to the specifics as Imani had detailed. Joining me via Zoom tonight is Dr. William Ahaji. He is Rector, Ghana Institute of Social Democracy, and former Director of Research for the NDC. Dr. Ahaji, thank you for joining us here on PM Express from home. I'm grateful that we could have you. Also joining me in the studio is Pius Hajide. He is a Deputy Minister for Information. Of course, this is a busy time for those at Information Ministry. As you can imagine, they have the difficult task of selling what government is doing out there. And so fans of Pius Hajide, you must definitely be celebrating him right now. The man is, as you can see, pretty knackered already, just traveling and doing a lot of, as they say, some may say propaganda, but some you say just informing people.
It's from information dissemination.
Well, so I mean, I'm sure the fans of Pius Hajide are pretty excited about what you're doing for your party. Thank you, gentlemen. Let me take quick your first brief reaction to the overall assessment of Imani on this. 56.77%. Happy with the score?
Well, thank you very much, Evans. Good evening to you and to my colleague over Zoom and to our cherished viewers. Evans, our attitude is not to get complacent with these complimentary ratings. This is not the first time. Just a fortnight ago, a couple of days actually ago, the CDD Ghana, in a similar research, in fact, their methodology was different. They went out to the people of Ghana and interviewed the respondents. And it was clear that the MPP had a 15 percentage point advantage over the NDC as far as the citizens' confidence, public confidence in either party's capacity to deliver on their campaign promises is concerned. 15 clear percentage points over and above the NDC. Again, the Imani Africa's work, with all the limitations that it contains, and I'll come to that in a bit, also suggests strongly that as far as the NPP's track record of implementing campaign promises are concerned, we are performing and doing far better than the NDC did within the same 4 years under review. Far better.
Just 3 percentage points different.
No, 3 percentage point difference in nominal terms is monumental. And I will explain and also link
Sounds
that
like
to
a lamb of the blind, a one eye minus skin. I mean, the man did 52.9, you do 56, and you say...
I would tell you, you see, there's some subjectivity in the analysis, and I'll show it to you. And that's why I'm saying that if you did the analysis in the real value terms, the nominal terms, for instance, somebody says that I'm going to maybe pass a legislation. That legislation is passed. You want to find the cost angle to that process, or as compared to somebody says that I'm going to do free SHS, and that happens. On the average, you're spending 2 billion cedis a year to be able to do that. If you did the real value analysis, you will find out that, and that's why I'm saying that we have to look at the real value, and even sometimes in nominal terms, what these promises really relate to. But by the methodology that Imani uses, they will score maybe the passage of a legislation as 1, which is the higher score.
Yes.
Okay? And then they will pass the free SHS also as 1. But I'm saying that we have done the analysis, and it is to a certain extent validated by what the Imani has done, even within the limitations that it suffers. But even that one suggests that we in the MPP, we have more credibility before the people of Ghana, before Imani, before your good selves, all the viewers, that when we say that we will do this, the probability that we will in fact do it is far higher than that of the NDC. But even though this is complementary, the president's instructions are that we should not get distracted and we should not get complacent. So to answer to your question straight as to whether we are excited or we are happy, well, it feels good that the people that you work for realize that indeed your output is high, you are working for them. But we are under strict instructions not to get complacent and get excited and take our eyes off the ball.
What is there to get complacent about when they just have just average? This is average. This is 56. It's average. This is right in the middle.
No. I said to you that, and I said that even with the limitations. So as far as we are concerned, our performance by
where will you put?
It's 80%. We have done that already, and I'll share the data. 80. We have counted. We recognize.
So that's that huge voluminous part of your manifesto where you tell us what you've done.
Yes. And we have counted 388 promises in our manifesto. You notice that the NDC, in a similar exercise like the Imani did recently, they counted about 610, and then Imani is counting about 500 and something. Okay, so depending on who is counting, only God knows what you are counting.
Yeah, but yours is an outlier. But you are right there in 300.
388.
If you reduce the number of promises, then you can say you've achieved more.
No, but I'm saying that if you add to the number of promises, on the other hand, if you add to the number of promises, wherever you fetch them from, then you can also say you have done less. So we are saying that we, based on the facts, and it's here, we will go through it one by one.
Yeah, well.
And you will notice that all the promises are actually accounted for, promise by promise, 388. Out of that, we have fulfilled either partially or fully over 300, in fact 303. And so that's about 79 point something, about 80% of our promises. So for us, we are confident that the people know. And that's what I believe reflects in the CDD's survey.
15 percentage points.
When they claim that there's a 15 percentage point clear difference. And now you're talking about the Imani Ghana, that puts us about 3 percentage points different. But we are saying that we know that we have done very well by the promises. And there are some times, maybe I thought that this may have to come up.
Yeah,
Imani has to explain to us how come they counted 504 or so promises.
510.
Because sometimes the tendency, and that's the sense I get, that they want to go beyond the manifesto and bring in some statements that they believe can be classified as promises.
I have the answer
because
for
they
you.
have been made by senior persons.
Yeah, I have the answer for you because we've also been counting with them. This is a partnership, I can tell you. But let me go to Dr. Haji. Dr. Haji, your reaction, initial reaction to the Imani assessment first of this government, then I will come to the records question shortly. But your reaction to it?
If I were, my initial reaction, that if I were NPP, I would be very worried because this is virtually an indictment on their performance. Typically, these global percentages mask out the essential points and essential policies that they've implemented. For instance, take the economy. Very, very huge score for macroeconomic stability. But how do we get the macroeconomic stability? We are debt distressed. They borrowed a huge amount of money. And indeed, the cost of living index says something completely different. So if what you do is to do the voodoo economics and borrow it to show up your currency, you haven't achieved that much. You can say that you said you're going to provide or to stabilize the economy. But the way you do it is an issue. And indeed, if you go out into the streets and you ask people, and perhaps I should also say that this particular piece of work is based on reports, as they themselves said it, government reports, self-serving government reports. The public budget, as we know, MPP is notorious for hiding real statistical data that would change the outlook of the economy, and the IMF exposed them. So again, they talked about annual progress reports written by the National Development Planning Commission. I've been part of that process. The governance indicators are showing that 49%. Now, let's take the economy again. Jobs. The youth unemployment is a huge problem. Look at the score they got there. You see, I would be worried because those are the areas that are critical for the development of this country, and many of them, and indeed, making policy and making policy statements are simple things to do. So when you set a low bar and you jump over it, and you give yourself a pat in the back, perhaps that's the reason why my partner is saying that they don't want to be complacent. This is nothing to beat your chest about. And indeed, we are saying that you don't need to compare apples and oranges, because clearly the things that they are claiming they've done, the roads, for instance, the interchanges, the 4 interchanges that were mentioned, Tema interchange, Bukwasi, Tamale, and indeed Obechabi, were projects that were for which funds were secured by the NDC before they came into power. They are claiming that to be their project. We won't contest them. I mean, we actually appreciate the fact that they've seen sense in what we're doing. There are several other policies in the energy sector. I mean, but where they are found wanting largely are the critical areas that would lead to the development of this country. Talk to the taxi drivers, talk to the transport operators, and you will hear a totally different thing. So they can't beat their chest and say they are good at performing or honoring their promises. And indeed, as the Honorable Ajide is saying, they made 388 promises. So the basis for comparison is stronger. A large percentage of a small value is still smaller than, an average percentage of a larger number of promises. So the basis for comparison is contestable.
Okay, I mean, let's go to the specifics. I think he's taking us there. I want to start with the economy, because that's the first part that the Imani analyzed. But even in economy, jobs. I've heard you talk a lot about jobs, youth, job creation, etc. Also because your manifesto in 2016 was themed jobs, was on the theme of jobs, right? You remember that. Yes. But on jobs, the Imani scored you job creation at 49%. That isn't something that you could be proud about. That's what Dr. Haji is saying there.
Well, first of all, there are a few incorrect assertions that's been made by my respected co-panelist.
Dr. Haji.
He made the point about the IMF exposing us on bad reportage. I think that he's confusing the two parties. It's rather the NDC, and we were penalized. We had to pay huge monies to the Bretton Woods institutions for bad reportage. There's not been one instance that the IMF has cited this government for misreportage.
I'm getting my team to check, because if I recall vaguely, there was an issue in the budget where the IMF put figures different from what your government did. But I'll check for you.
No, the IMF country rep settled that matter, I'm sure, on your network.
On Newsfile, yes.
When he said that it was not a question of bad reportage, that they were pretty aware of what style of reportage this administration was using. They have approved of it. It's just that they have another style, and they report the two styles together. So it has never been a question of misreporting. In fact, misreporting to the IMF is actually sanctionable, and so there would be evidence to the effect or to buttress any act of misreportage or bad reporting. So there's none. It is rather the NDC that's on record to have misreported, and for which reason this country suffered penalty. Several millions of cedis we had to pay. That's number one. Number two, youth unemployment. Yeah. And he says that we should check from which figures is Dr. Haji looking at.
If we use Imani's own assessment,
well, but if you look at it's shocking.
What you promise you do.
It's shocking if he says that in fact the Ghana Living Standard Survey, I think around 7 survey that just came, youth unemployment actually has reduced by I believe 3 or 5 percentage points. I cannot pinpoint the figure directly, but it has in the round 7 of the Ghana Living Standard Survey, and the gentleman from Imani took you to a litany of the job creation interventions that were rolled out by this administration.
Yeah, but yet they give you 14. Are you happy with 49%?
No, but I'm saying that the analysis itself is problematic. I made that point. I made that point in the first place.
Job creation, what
because you see, there's a lot of subjectivity in the analysis by Imani, and the gentleman kept making the point that we believe, we think, we believe, and so their own personal views, their subjective views are reflected. I would have thought that they would have stuck to the empiricals and dealt with it.
What are the empiricals?
And so the empiricals are that we have created 2-point-something million jobs.
But that's what you claim. What's the evidence there?
But they're there. We accounted for it. We accounted for it. In the public space, we have, even by sector, we have accounted for it. We have told you the numbers.
2.5 million jobs.
2.2 million jobs thereabout.
It's in your manifesto. I've seen it.
2.055 million jobs.
In what areas?
So, for instance, in the public sector, we have created 778,706 jobs.
I mean,
and that's the public sector.
I'm curious. I'm curious why any government will use that as a basis to say I've created jobs. Public sector, we have to employ people.
Yeah, but there was another government that didn't create that much jobs in the public sector. There was a ban on employment into the public sector under the NDC. So there's all the reason why we can cite job creations. As we speak now, we are recruiting police, we are recruiting teachers, we are recruiting doctors.
Ideologically,
so
this is a government. This is an MPP that believes the private sector must lead in terms of job creation.
Correct.
You're correct. Okay, so where is the private sector job creation there?
It's here.
What is it? What is it?
I was just going to take you through it.
Okay, so go.
So this is the public sector. This is the formal private sector. The former private sector, like Joy FM, like Joy News TV. 267,930.
Where do you get that figure
You
from?
get this figure from SNIT. You are under injunction. You are under injunction to pay SNIT.
How many?
So 267,939.
You've created 200,000 jobs in the private sector in 4 years for a party with your ideology.
If you benchmark this, if you benchmark this against the situation that this administration inherited, Dumso.
Oh, you are blaming on NDC?
No, but I'm saying that we are coming from somewhere. So if you have a situation where your economy broke down completely, where you had factories shut down.
Broke down?
Completely. And you had factories shut down, and you have come to resuscitate. You need time and energy. You need investments. And so it is not something that you are going to come and swing the magic wand and then everything would come back to. It takes a process. And so we created an environment for over 260,000. And you want to check what the NDC did in the 4 years. In fact, you even want to check what they are promising going forward. Who would have thought that from 2 million jobs, Ghana will be making progress to about 3 million jobs. But they are taking us back.
A million jobs.
That's a promise to take us back.
Which tells
you that even in the last 4 years, the NDC did less than 1 million jobs. If they did more than 1 million jobs, they will not be promising 1 million jobs today for the future. But we are talking about 2 million jobs. And the government job creation programs like NAPCO, like Planting for Food and Jobs, like
1 million jobs.
Over 1 million jobs.
No, but Pius, here's the thing. Shouldn't it be worrying that your two biggest, and these are all claims, the two biggest areas that you claim you created jobs are not private sector jobs. They are in government-created jobs that we know. The accusation is that it's mainly for boys' jobs, for MPP boys, NAPCO, etc. That you are using the taxpayers' money to put people in there and give them some 400. See, the quality of job is an issue. And also in the public sector, which all will employ anyway because you don't have a ban. But the area for the MPP that you should be emphasizing and thumping your chest and saying you have achieved, you have 200,000 jobs. That clearly...
No, Evans.
That clearly is a problem.
Even in the private sector. Even in the private sector.
This is a government that says creating the enabling environment for the private sector to thrive.
I can assure you that even
especially when you say the NDC created an economy that people lost jobs, private sector didn't get you. So you have enabled them.
Absolutely.
And yet the private sector is only employing 200,000 jobs.
No, Evans, 200,000 and over jobs is not only.
In 4 years.
It's not only.
In 4 years.
From an economy that was characterized with incompetent management, that was inherited growth at some paltry 3-point-something%, and so on, Dumso, destroying businesses and so on, over 200,000 jobs on the back of that kind of inheritance is no mean feat. Again, I said to you that this is the formal private sector like multimedia. And I can assure you that there are several other opportunities that we have not even counted in these 2 million. If you ask us to expand and capture all the private sector opportunities that have been created, I dare suggest to you that we will be talking about figures far higher than this. But because we wanted to deal with the empirical figures, verifiable, okay, we asked ourselves, how do we get these ones? And we came to the conclusion that let us use the figures from SNIT. Any new person who has been employed into the formal private sector, there is an injunction on the employer to pay SNIT. So if you go to SNIT and SNIT tells you the numbers of new persons that we are paying SNIT for, then that gives you a fair idea of the job opportunities that have sprung up in the formal private sector. But that's just the formal private sector. How about the informal private sector? We haven't accounted for that. So chances are that the figure is even higher.
If we can't account for it, then it doesn't exist.
We have not. I didn't say that we cannot account for it. I said we have not accounted for it. Okay? Because at the end of the day, everybody will come to the admission that over 2 million jobs in 4 years is a huge achievement. Just suppose this with somebody who is
very contested.
But you just suppose this to somebody who is promising 1 million jobs in the same areas, public sector, formal private sector, and government job creation programs. In the same areas, they are promising 1 million jobs. We have delivered 2 million jobs already. But in any case, you spoke about I spoke to you about some of the limitations of the Imani finding. Yeah. Okay. Even though we respect their work and we encourage them to do more, we'll also encourage them to look at methodologies that remove subjectivity and that get us towards the empiricals, or maybe public view, public service. Then we can know what's really and truly the people of Ghana feel. But look at this. Look at this.
The
economy. The Imani itself counts 162 promises. According to them. I disagree, but that's according to them. Now, out of the 162 Evans, they themselves say that 142 have been tackled. Okay? Which means that partially or fully completed, if you put it together, is 142. Out of 162, only 20 promises, according to Imani itself, have not been initiated. Yeah. They score as 53.62.
57.
57.62. Yeah. How is that possible? If you check 142 out of 162, only 20 have not been initiated. If you ask me, layman's knowledge in mathematics, this is more than 80% already.
Well, okay, let's hold on. Let me bring in Dr. Haji briefly. Dr. Haji, let's move into the records now, because thankfully Imani did a similar job on the NDC in 2016. I just pulled up the economic data back then. Same time when they published it in 2016, on economy you scored 43.9%. MPP currently has scored 52.53%. I've just been looking at the specific table to see where the job creation numbers are. What I see in there is jobs in agriculture, where you scored 46.2%. So even though the overall picture, in comparison on agriculture, according to Imani, the MPP has done better than you have.
Well, you're comparing a survey by Imani with that of CDD.
No,
right?
no. This is this one is this Imani's publication today. They do it every 4 years, and I'm going to track back to what they did on the NDC in 2016. Just before the elections, just to it's the same report, same time, just so we can check and see what the differences are.
Well, the point I have made, and I'm still making, is that MPP's argument in 2016 was that they were going to create jobs, not the giving it to the private sector. They were going to create jobs. We were not creating jobs, and therefore it was the basis for this 1D, this infamous 1D, 1F program. I would have expected MPP to be saying that we established so many factories and they employed so many people. Don't leave it to the private sector, because the private sector initiates its own programs and starts its job creation exercise. The government's argument then was that when they were in opposition, that we were not creating sufficient jobs and they were going to create even more jobs. He's struggling with I've worked in the employment sector for virtually my entire professional life, and there is no way this economy will create 2 million jobs in 4 years, because the labor market entrance numbers show that we just get about 300,000 people entering the labor market every year.
In which sector? Now, is it public sector or private sector?
Without skills, most of them don't have the skills. Come again, please.
I was asking if the 300,000 you mentioned, is it in the public or private sector?
Unfortunately, I have a very...
Sorry, can you hear me?
No, just the labor market. Those who leave school. I can hear you, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is broadly all the sectors.
That's the labor market entrance every year from school, from all the other, yes. But a large number of them don't have skills. So what kind of jobs are they creating for this number? It is contestable, but I don't even want to go there. Our conversation is based on the report that Imani has submitted, that they've scored 49%. For a government that is supposed to be private sector oriented. And he's citing public sector jobs created? No, that's not. I said from the beginning that I would be worried if I were MPP. If we move to Agric, I would wish that we could have a discussion on Agric as well. The performance is just as abysmal as it's been in the economy, and I mean all the other sectors. If you look at that, and as you rightly said, the average is not speaking well of a government that claims that, oh, well, we come to power, we are going to put money in your pocket, everybody. They haven't done many of those things. Trade is also very low in the economy. You can check that and see. I mean, that's why I said there's substantive things. The critical areas where progress has to be made are revealing poor performance. For a neoliberal government, I think that they should go back and revise their notes.
Okay, so I want to ask that original question. Paul, I'll come to you. Original question again. I mean, because as we all agree, and John Mahama had made this a point in his campaigns, that this year is about records. So same report, same election year, 2016 to 2020. If you go to 2016, when Imani published the same report, but this time about John Mahama's 4 years, on economy, I want a response to that. On economy, they scored John Mahama 43.9%. On economy for current president, as we know, they scored them 52.53%, using the same methodology, etc. I mean, you admit then that, I mean, at least if you look at that broad picture of economy, on this assessment by Imani, election to election year, NPP's done better?
When you are conducting surveys, the contexts change. The context change. So it is quite, you see, unless you do the survey over a long period, or you see, this point-to-point comparison does not reveal the conditions of living of people in the particular context. So I have a little problem with that, and I've said that many times, that these kinds of surveys are you know, sometimes they are propagandist in nature. You know, so I will not work with those things if I were given the opportunity to assess them, because some of them, as he himself said, are value laden. They are driven by the values of those who prepare those things. Some of them are not empirical. Some of them are not representative enough. You recall I was saying that if you went around Accra, you caught 50 birds and 20 pigeons, and 27 of them are white and 23 are black. You can't conclude that the majority of birds in Accra are black.
But Dr. Haji, except that you also, except that you also have to consider the credibility of the organization in question. This is Imani. This Manifesto project, they've done for years. In fact, not only in Ghana, but in the West Africa sub-region in other economies. And they won international reputable awards for it before. And so that must count. And also the methodology they've put out, in essence, just looking at what do you promise you will do as against what you actually did by the time you exit power? That should count for something in analyzing the credibility of the two reports they did. Same report, same methodology, just simply looking at what the parties promised and what they did whilst in government. I mean, that clearly will hold water, credibility terms, anytime. Wouldn't
that's not in dispute, Evans. That's not in dispute. But you see, the rating agencies around the world are supposed to be very credible institutions, and when they pass judgments on their economy, they're supposed to lead to confidence building in the economy, etc. But we know also that these international rating agencies do underhand things as well. So they can win awards, Standard & Poor's, and a number of them do that. But we also know that some of these things are subject to manipulation. So yes, you can talk about the credibility of an institution, but there are also human beings working in those institutions. We will subject the methodology to rigorous examination before we will conclude that what they are saying is reflective of the particular situation. And I'm saying that if we look at the figures, we match the figures of prices over the period, over the last 4 years, the value of the city and all of those things, they show something totally different, even though these figures are put out by a credible civil society organization. Yeah. The real issues on the ground have not been covered.
Yeah, okay, but also we put it in context. They were simply measuring what the party promised in their 2016 manifesto against what they have implemented in 4 years. And so it's simply, if you say you do X, have you done the X, not necessarily the impact on the ground. This is a different kind of, I guess, project. Stay with me, Dr. Ahaji. I'll come to you shortly, but give me a quick 1 minute reaction. I wanted to go for a break. And when we return, we'll talk about the corruption and governance angles to the report that Imani had done.
No, Evans, if Dr. Haji speaks for the NDC this evening, then they are very good friends in the Imani will not be happy with them at all.
You say good friends in the Imani. Well, how do you mean?
I mean, I'm saying that if Dr. Haji is representing the position of the NDC today, and the descriptives he's using, they are very good friends in Imani, will not be happy with them.
I'm trying to understand what you mean by they are good friends in Imani. They are good friends. That's in their friends.
They are friends, yes.
As in Imani is.
No, don't impugn. I'm just. It's just.
Is that an innocuous statement you're making, or there's something more?
No, it's just an innocuous statement. I don't know what you want to read into it, but I'm saying again.
It sounds very diabolical.
Go on break.
It sounds.
No, I'm saying that.
It sounds very diabolical.
Go on break.
Yeah, because
I'll come to
go on break.
Essentially,
forgive me because
you can criticize your friends. You can criticize your friends.
Okay. Yeah, go on.
At least there's now he's conceding that they have very good friends in money. That's fine. They are my friends as well. Okay. But you see, the point is that he has just not criticized their friends. He's indicted their work. And even suggested underhand dealings and their own motivations and so on. But you see, what is important for me is that even though I have challenges with the methodology and the high levels of subjectivity that I see in the Imani process, you held all other variables constant. Other variables constant. And then you compared the NPP output with the NDC output with the same methodology that Imani has been using. So at that point, I ceased to discuss the nuances of their processes. But if you wanted us to discuss whether this is a true reflection of what the situation on the ground is, I would take a different position. But once you held all other variables constant, and you said that this is what Imani says about the MPP, and this is what Imani says about the NDC, then at least we can discuss. It is on that basis that you see that Dr. Haji is running away and is now indicting the Imani. Because clearly, item by item, they are good friends in the Imani, even have made a conclusive statement that we are better managers of the economy. And so when he talks about we borrowing money, he may have to avert his mind to some facts. You see, between 2008 and 2012, our debt increased by some 267%, Evans. The NDC was in power. Between 2012 and 2016, the debt increased by some 243%. Between 2016 and 2019, okay? And this is 2019 because 2020 is now about ending. 76%. Okay? And so
to GDP or just
the increment, just the jump. Okay, 76%. And so if you are talking about borrowing, then I think that it's a case of the pot calling the kettle black.
Let me quickly fact check that, because when in 2013, and I'm going to use what internationally used in terms of debt, the debt to GDP ratio, which is what you look at in terms of seeing if your debt is being sustainable or not.
No, I've not looked at the debt to GDP, but I can look at it as well.
I'm just giving you other statistics that puts that in context.
Okay.
2013, John Mahama was doing 35.58% to GDP when it comes to debt. 2020, IMF projects that you're doing 76.7% to GDP. That's debt.
Well, debt to GDP, between 2008 and 2012, 49 percentage point increases on the average. Mm-hmm. Between 2012 and 2016, 19%. Between 2016 and 2019, if you took out the cost of the financial sector cleanup, less than 4%.
Well, I mean,
between the 4 years.
In terms of the projection.
Just the 4 years.
When you came to power, your debt to GDP was 57%. Currently, we are talking about 76%. Do the calculation. It's quite significant compared to what John Mahama did, 35% to GDP in 2013, and when he was leaving,
you're picking 1 year.
54.83%. I mean, this is called according to the IMF. I'm just
yes. But I'm looking at the 4 years averages. I'm looking at the 4 years.
I want to take a break. When I return,
but he said something also about funding for the interchange.
And
he said that the Tamale interchange, they had budgeted for it. It's from Sino Hydro. So how is that possible?
But he's right on the other ones. He's right.
Well, we can even have a discussion on that. Even that one, he's not fully right.
No, but we can come to you agree that at least he's right on the other ones that they got funding for. I'll take a break. When I return, we'll look at one of the most important areas that I'm sure everybody has been looking at, the corruption and governance performance of the MPP. And then we'll end by looking at the overall performance. And then this is where the track records comes in. 2016, 2020, the two main political parties, who is more believable when it comes to delivery on promises? Stay with me. And thank you very much for staying with us. Very exciting conversation. Obviously, anytime we do Manifesto Tracker, subjecting the records of the two parties to some scrutiny, allowing you to decide where to pitch your tent. Tonight, it's courtesy of Imani, our partners. They've done this, what they do every election year, the Manifesto, the tracking the promises that the parties have made, and they scored the government 56.77%. But in the next 10 minutes, I want to go through to one of the key controversial areas that Imani highlighted in red. And this has to do with governance, corruption, and public accountability. Pius, they scored you 43%, one of the lowest marks you scored. Now, this is coming on a day or in a week when we've had special prosecutor issues with the Ijapa having emerged again, Public Procurement Authority boss going. Isn't this a confirmation that you promised to address corruption, but as Imani had found, it's not even average. It's 43%. This clearly is cause for concern for you.
No, we disagree very sharply.
Why do you disagree?
With Imani, and we know the promises we have made, and I think that
you promised to do SP.
Yes, we have done this. We have done that.
You promised to do
pass that, TI. We have passed that.
Yes, but there are many other things you promised that you do that hasn't been done, which Imani has captured at 43. That must concern you.
No, I think that it is the subjectivity and the analysis that has interfered with the empirical analysis that must happen. And I'm trying to just find the page on the governance and corruption. And I think that it is in one of those areas that the MPP actually should score one of the highest marks. And they get into some, and I was listening to my brother speak about the fact that people's attitudes have not changed, and he uses one example, but there are several other examples of very high examples and standards, even by His Excellency the President himself, by responding to, for instance, the recommendations of the OSP, if you talk about public ethics, okay, that is the high standard and a shining example that has been cited. They choose to pay a blind eye to that, and then they go to PPA and they say, okay, because this happened in PPA, it means that the general fight against corruption has been lost. That's not true. And I want to go to the page on the promises that we made relative to governance and the corruption. I will take you to a long list. Just give me a moment, or maybe allow Dr. Haji.
You're looking at page 103. That's the page you're looking for. Page 103. I mean, just so that we could, because we don't have time on this. I mean, so what is it that you want to say about that? Because the evidence is clear for me, man.
This is why I wanted to take you through this, a long list. The Witness Protection Act 2018 has been passed by us. Office of the Special Prosecutor Act 2018. Corporate Restructuring and Insolvency Act 2020 passed. Public Financial Management Regulations LI passed. Right to Information Act passed. Companies Act passed. We have also digitized a lot of government processes and government agencies to remove the human factor, which is being cited as critical to corruption. If you go to the passport office today, if you go to DVLA and so on, we have defended several of the legal claims against the state, and we have reversed the trend of judgment debts, okay, that were very, very common during the era of the NDC, and which these are specific promises we made in our manifesto, okay? And what have we again done? Over 40 high-profile cases, we spoke about prosecuting corrupt cases. As we speak, we have prosecuted over 40 cases. Some of them have ended in convictions and so on. That is a plus. It's a complete fulfillment of our manifesto promise. Then the Public Officers Code. This is currently before Parliament. But the Imani scores as 0 because Parliament hasn't passed it.
Yeah, because you promised to pass it.
So the fact that work has happened and it's gone before Parliament, and they use the same thing with Pualugu, because we haven't seen a dam today in Pualugu. They have scored as 0. Even though a lot of work has gone into Pualugu, funding has been sought, contracts have been awarded, they still score as 0 because a dam has not been completed and is fully functional. But it takes time to build a dam. So I think that that's what I'm saying, that sometimes it is the subjectivity.
But Pius, you've just mentioned the things you've done in corruption, but there's so many things. And remember, the money was just checking.
I'm not done. I'm not done.
I mean, but there's so many. You said it in the 2016
So maybe
manifesto.
they should mention some of the things.
You said you reform laws to set time limits within which an appointing authority must fill any vacancy or confirm a person. It hasn't been done. Enhance accountability in governance by promoting the effective separation of powers, adequate provision to secure the independence of the judiciary.
That's been done. I just said to you that today more courts have been established. More courts have been established.
Transparency by establishing a transaction price database which will be periodically reviewed to conform to market trends. Sponsored the establishment of an interactive website for public reporting of corruption practices in accordance with Website Whistleblowers Act. You haven't done it. Ensure strict enforcement of the Public Procurement Act. We've seen from the public procurement sacking, you have to sack him as an admission. There has a lot of the key things haven't been done.
No, Evans. The processes that have gone on at the PPA to ensure compliance are matters of public record. That the fact that one public officer may stand accused of misconduct does not mean that there are no processes, okay? So we may have to move away from the isolated cases of alleged misconduct on the part of certain individuals to create an impression that work has not, it is the structure, and I just took you to all of these structural and legal steps that have been taken to make corruption difficult. Yes.
No, that's not a view out there. The perception
No, but you see, but that's why it's just a perception.
Okay, well, in political perception, reality.
Well, but if you have a political party that is bent on fueling these perceptions whether substantiated or not. And I can give you a few examples. In Parliament, they were divided amongst themselves, the NDC, whether there was corruption in the confirmation of the honorable minister nominee for energy, honorable Dr. Honorable Abuache Jako.
I mean,
so this, if you have an opposition that is minded to fuel these perceptions and not realities, just so that they can gain political advantage, then you can have the perception index can tell a different story. But the reality is different.
Let me bring in Dr. Haji. So as we close, I mean, the overall picture is what I want you to comment on for me. Overall, Imani scores the government 56.77%, right? In 2016, overall, they assessed John Mahama at 52.9%. I mean, you've seen the comparative data there. What's your comment on that as we close? I mean, and this goes to the believability of both parties when it comes to confidence in delivering promises. And MPP throws in also CDD's report that said they have 15 percentage advantage points. Voters looking at all this will say, well, should I pitch my tent in the MPP camp? What would you say?
Confidence is what you get before you know better. I mean, I think that those who would decide are the voters and who is more trustworthy. Unfortunately, my network was very unstable, so I couldn't comment on the governance section.
But you can. You can. I mean, you can. You have a minute or two to go. You can comment. Use that to spend the time commenting on the government.
Okay. All right. Yes. I spent 13 years as a governance consultant to the National Development Planning Commission, and we almost every year we looked at the governance indicators. What has happened over the last 3-4 years is unbelievable. The indicators, the corruption perception index, the media freedom, all those things are showing negative. And so it didn't surprise me at all that indeed I was asked to discontinue my work in January 2017. But I'm not surprised that the government has scored set low marks on governance. If that is the situation, it's not surprising at all. So I'll say this is a government that campaigned on the back of a wrong label that NDC was corrupt and incompetent. I mean, what we've seen now, this is state capture, PDS, Ajapa deal, the large number of malfeasance in the public sector, the PPA, all of these things indict NPP. Let me also correct the impression that I'm trying to indict Imani. That's not the point I was making at all. I'm saying that there are factors that you can take into account when you're looking at surveys, and sometimes they are overlooked. The reality, if I went around and conducted surveys about cost of living by a certain group of people, the results will be completely different. So opinions differ in these things. But overall, as I said, the basis for comparison seems to be wrong. They are talking about 380, and I said from the beginning that these ratios are subject to further interrogation.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Haji, I'm grateful that you joined us with your thoughts. Pius, thankful that you made time to join us. And
I also have
the time is up. You were in the studio, so you had the lion's share. And I'm sure friends of Pius Ajide will be very excited that you managed to make your way. Pius will be joining us for our election night coverage also. Of course, this is your election headquarters, and this is where you want to stay. Sports is up next. Stay with us.